Yeah, well, so started this, launched it January 1st. Hooked up with Gwen about 3, 4 months ago, and saw we both had the same idea. Gwen didn't have the time, and I said, you know what? Why don't we find a way to get this done together and get this off and started. And so it's been a little over a month and doing well.
Well, that's good to hear, and we'll look forward to hearing what you're seeing. Certainly, good first month to start a silver venture.
You got
And
that right.
yeah, it's funny. The last time we talked, I think the headline of our talk was, "Is silver going to be the next Bitcoin?" And certainly, in terms of conditions facilitating that, a
That's
lot
right.
happened since then. Real quick, before we hop into questions, Yara Vinay of Arcadia Economics, welcome on in tonight.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's awesome to be here with you guys for Silver Bowl #1.
That is right. Welcome. Hopefully, we'll score a lot of touchdowns. David, welcome on in. Great to see you back again this weekend. How are you tonight?
I'm well, thanks. I'm here outside of Toronto, and yeah, looking forward to whatever we talk about.
Well, I like my friends up in Eastern Toronto. Right now, we know they're always free. You're not going too far, but good time to talk some silver. And Andy James Bond Scheckman, welcome on in, sir. How are you tonight?
Brother Chris, doing good. Good to see you.
Welcome to
well.
Silver Bowl 1. And obviously, what kind of Silver Bowl are you going to have without giving away some silver? So Chris has some Britannias here. And Yara, maybe you can keep an eye on the chat for someone who is saying anything silvery. We don't have a ton of time tonight because we actually have an important video coming up at 10:15 Central Time, because it's actually something I'm not particularly happy to report in one sense, because there's a lot of questions as I continue to look into SLV, especially with the historic amounts that were added last week. And we talked about a little bit on Friday. There was another video Friday that Andy, actually, I'll start with you, because what I thought was spooky today, I don't know what it means. I just have questions, which we'll see in that show. But the last time that the last time it was audited, the day the audit finished was March 6th of last year.
Real close to the low.
In fact, it was $17.21. And then basically when it opens on Monday, I'll pull up the chart here, it had begun that descent, and within 2 weeks, it was under $12. Now, certainly for those of us who follow the silver market and have seen how paper gets hammered on the market and drives the price lower, and I almost have my chart up here, that doesn't really come as a surprise, but that was pretty shocking to me. Here's March 6th. That's the last day of the last time SLV was audited. And then here, which I think a lot of us, certainly I'll speak for myself. I won't say specific to who, but I believe that a felony took place there in the silver market, a clear violation of the law. And there was 388 million ounces in the trust on March 6th, 2020. And in the next 2 weeks, you had the Fed launch the Sunday night announcement going to quantitative easing. You had the failure of the EFP market. And then the Fed upgraded that, or actually it was the upgrade to unlimited quantitative easing that resulted in the failure of the EFP market. And that amount in the SLV trust has gone from 388 to 704. And nobody has been incited except for JP Morgan, who a couple months later settled a $920 million settlement. I guess I was told by the lawyer to phrase it. Andy, does that concern you as someone who runs a business where customers trust you with their metals, and you can talk about what is normal for an audit procedure, but what would you say to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, and you could point to the fact that demand was off the charts at that point too. It's I'd say, to say the least, mildly disconcerting, and I think that was right around the time as well that J.P. Morgan was settling their fine of paying their 180 million or however many ounces that they were supposedly going to pay in retribution for the problems that they made. I know that they went from a billion to 700 million ounces, or excuse me, 100. Sorry, from 100 to 130 to, what were the numbers, Chris? What were the numbers on Comex at that point? I'm thinking their big picture of a billion ounces, but they had what, 300 million ounces on Comex, went to 130 or 170, something along those lines. Whatever the numbers are, you can correct me, but it happened within days of that too. Whatever it is, that's just not how markets behave. Markets just don't fall off the table like that when there's just massive demand in every respect, whether it be physically or globally across the board.
David Stein, as someone who's running a business that I personally believe that there are banks illegally affecting the price of what you're selling, what do you think about when JP Morgan issues a sell report Tuesday at 5 a.m. in the morning, which mentions nothing about the physical buying, mentions nothing about the SLV buying? I mean, does that concern you as an investor or as the leader of a silver company, some of these things that we keep seeing?
Was that last week?
David, that's every week.
Okay.
But you can pick last week because in particular, I know
Well,
you were on last
week,
Saturday.
we had the big run over the weekend, and then, the price got smashed on Tuesday. That's why I was just wondering if that was a specific event that you were pointing to there. But anyway, to answer your question, look, I mean, I think in general there does seem to be still a lot of negativity coming from the banks about silver. And how much of that is actually just misunderstanding of the supply and demand, or whether or not it's sort of a more coordinated messaging. I don't know yet, but I was pretty surprised when when we had that big run, of about $2 or $3. So it's not that big, but it was pretty important few days for us in the silver market. And just the universally negative messaging I was hearing on media about the silver price. So obviously, running a company in the silver business, that's discouraging because we want to be able to sell our product for as high a price as possible. That's how our shareholders are going to make money. That's how we can better benefit the communities that we're in, our workers, our employees. Everybody benefits on our side of the business if the price is high. So that's what we want to see, and that's what we need to think about how we can achieve that.
Peter, any comment on that?
Yeah, to me, it certainly is fishy. I mean, you can obviously make the argument that they pulled that trigger after it had run up 20% in a few days. So I would think that would be their argument. But was it overpriced? In the very short term, possibly. Historically, fundamentally, definitely not. So, if they have no sort of justification for their sell, then that certainly is, to me, questionable.
And here you can see the chart, the blue line here, that's where things opened last Sunday, shoots right up. Andy, you've talked all week, and I thought it was important not just to have you on because, yes, we have a business relationship, but that's why I brought other bullion dealers on. There have been several of them on. They've all reported the same thing. People have seen the reports on Zero Hedge and elsewhere. So that kind of made a lot of sense that the price would go up, especially when we had record SLV additions that are so big. I have yet to find anyone who believes they're possible. So here's the blue line, leads into Monday. We see that rally. And then here's what just didn't seem natural to me. That, again, that, you know, how many times we've seen that 2 o'clock in the morning. And then you actually look over here. Again, this is what just I've seen time and time again. And by the way, for anyone who's watching this, there will be a presentation in 32 minutes that goes through all of this in quite clear detail, lays it out as clearly as possible in a format that I would encourage people to send to the CFTC, send to congressmen, send to regulators. And again, I know there's that a lot of you out there saying, hey, well, what's that going to do? What difference does that make? Gee, if there's ever been a time where we all would benefit more than ever from abandoning that type of thinking, we've seen more attention on this issue than ever. If nothing else, just flood the CFTC's inbox with emails if you feel what we've been presenting here last week, or especially what is coming up, is relevant, because here you see heavy volume right there. So I guess, David, maybe the question I wanted to ask you before, I would say, based on some of these things, do you feel it's at least appropriate for the CFTC to look at these trading records when we see here, in the face of massive, they claimed 110 million ounces went into SLV over Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then here's Tuesday. On Tuesday alone, while price is getting clobbered, they reported 61 million ounces going in. David, you're one of the people counted on to provide silver for the world. Does that seem possible to you? And that the price could fall 10% on the day that happens, while there is also panic buying in the physical market?
No, it doesn't add up, Chris. It's just that simple. You got to wonder how SLV adds all that, physical silver so quickly. Whether or not it was there in a vault somewhere and they just moved the ownership, to have that kind of demand and the price going down is it's startling.
And I might add, I called iShares on Friday. I don't have any interest in reporting anything inaccurate. I don't want to be sued. And I also treat the people in my audience, my mom watches. They're my friends. So I'm not, all this stuff has been double checked. And I called SLV. I said, you guys say that 110 million ounces went in. Does that mean that, maybe they're going to go in tomorrow or in the next couple of days or anything? I'm not guessing here. No, she confirmed. If they say shares are added, the metal is deposited that day. And so here's the perfect example. Silver was down 10% on a day where there was panic buying in the physical market and 61 million ounces added to these trusts. And Peter, in a second, I'm going to ask you if you could help put in context for anyone new how much 61 million ounces is. But that's the thing that the other question that I would hope the CFTC would ask, is there any conflict of interest? Because if anyone knew that 61 million shares were going into the trust, JP Morgan, because iShares also confirmed they're the custodian. And I said, okay, when metal's added or subtracted, who actually does that? She says the custodian. And I say, who's that? She says, JP Morgan. They must have known that 54 million ounces went in the previous 2 days. And then on the day when the market declined 10%, and they gave their sell report right here. They didn't mention, in fact, it's interesting, in their sell report, at least the Market Watch article, they didn't mention why they were selling silver. They talked about a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm trying to track down the actual report they issued. I haven't seen it yet. I've heard that they didn't mention much more in there. So who sold up here? Did they have access to the report? This is a little bit earlier. I believe the report's issued sometime around here. Has the CFTC checked who sold there. People who have access to that report and know it was going to be public before the rest of the world got it. Did they sell there? And Peter, can you put in context? Because I know a lot of people, 61 million ounces. How big is that?
Well, a year's mine supply is about 1 billion ounces. So if you figure 60 million ounces, I'm going to say roughly a month's, maybe just under a month's worth of mine production. So if you figure all the silver mined across the world, to be able to add that in a day, that's something.
Does it seem possible that if the market is not being manipulated, that they could take 61 million ounces, find it somewhere, and actually, Peter, I know you're following this closely.
Yeah.
Have you heard any bullion dealer describe anything? And I don't think I've ever come on and said panic buying before this past week. Is that an appropriate term based on what you have heard?
On what, based on what I've heard and seen so far, yeah, absolutely. I've been looking at a bunch of bullion dealers all across this weekend, and everything, practically every single item's out of stock. I'm talking even in gold. A lot of the gold is out of stock. They're mostly asking, for anywhere from a 10 to 15 day delay, special case because of the situation. And everything I've seen is that normally when prices pop like this, some supply will come in, people will sell. No one's selling back to them. Everyone's just buying or trying to buy. So it certainly, panic is to me the best descriptor for what's been happening. And yeah, I can't see anything else. I really can't.
Yara, and by the way, everybody who is joining us now on the live chat, welcome into Silver Bowl 1. Hopefully we're making this one a little bit more fun. We will get some comments about the game from our panelists as well. But before we get to that, sticking with what I think it's kind of great timing, because it feels to me, I try to be careful about how it feels like something Super Bowl like is brewing underneath the surface of silver right now. And Yara, you are almost 3 years into your silver career. Is that about right?
That's about right.
And Yara works or takes care of all the orders when people ask us, where do we buy silver? We have a partnership with Andy of Miles Franklin. And Yara, you've been the one talking to people, taking the orders, hearing what they say. I'd love to hear your perspective, what you've seen over this period of time.
Well, interestingly, to a certain degree, I have been doing so much Arcadia stuff that I have been having to get help back from Miles Franklin headquarters with Andy's lovely wife, Jana, helping out because it was too much for me to do. And so it's great that they have an awesome team of salespeople that can help people make the right decisions and get the metals that are best for them. But for me personally, it was too much volume to be able to give people the right kind of customer service. And people were not interested in the premiums. They wanted to know what we had in stock and what they could get delivered soon. And those were the two first things that were on the top of everybody's mind, whether they were saying this is my first time buying silver or whether they're a person I talk to every 2 weeks.
Very true.
Yeah.
And Yara, based on, you came into this perhaps a little later than the rest of us, but you've seen a lot. You've seen, I think, every video that we've done. Is there, what's your view of the CFTC's role based on everything you've seen?
Well, I'm not a legal mind in any way, but as a person who has had responsibility for numerous things throughout my life, I view it as irresponsible to outright negligent. We read the mission statement of the CFTC, and it's to protect investors. And with everything I've learned, I'm having a really hard time seeing how they're living out their mission statement on any level.
Especially since we heard Bart Schulten confirm that the investigation back 10 years ago, apparently he saw it quite clearly.
Yeah.
In fact, the CFTC never publicly mentioned, when they said there was no signs of manipulation, they never mentioned any of the things that he found.
Right.
So they could have at least said, we didn't find proof, but there were signs, but they didn't mention that. Now, 10 years later, they found hundreds of thousands. That's actually in their press release. If people think I'm making that, I could understand. Hundreds of thousands. And they said it was over the same time period when they did their first investigation. And yet they've reached a settlement with JP Morgan, but they've said they spoofed. But how is it, do you think as a citizen, it's appropriate that they could comment? Because you heard Bart Schulten, and I think people get caught up spoofing, hammering the bid. I think the CFTC calls this a spoof, because when I asked Bart about how the mechanic works, and I said, I've come to understand that they nudge it a little bit, especially around the handle, those, it's like $25 right at the numbers. Then you kick the stop orders in, especially it was a day after margins were raised. And Bart just sits there and says, yeah, that's exactly how it works. So Yara, based on what you've seen, does it seem like the exact thing that JP Morgan paid $1 billion to settle? Some bank, does it appear as if some bank did that again on the same, right around the same time that JP Morgan told everybody to sell without mentioning any of the rabid demand?
Yes, it looks like a carbon copy of numerous other days, although albeit a little bit bigger than a lot of the other instances we've looked at since I've been a part of this for the last 3 years, looking back historically and currently.
And Yara, you've watched the video that we're about to release tonight, and you've
Yes.
seen some of the things that, and you've been there as I've been finding some of these things about SLV in the past couple of days. What are your thoughts on that?
It leaves a lot of questions unanswered, but with evidence directly in front of our faces is kind of how I was left at the end of the video, and throughout our, our journey the last few weeks, as things have gotten wild and things are getting uncovered as well. So I want some answers.
Do you think that the investors who just purchased 110 million shares of SLV in the past week, which I would be, what's that, $250-ish million? Can someone correct my rough math there? Do you think they're aware of what is on the video that's about to be released?
Very few of them, unless they've been watching your channel the last week or so.
Do you think that
news?
Do you think those investors, if they had been aware of that, would have purchased 110 million shares of SLV in the past week?
I can't speak for other people, but if I had known that and I was going to invest, I would not. And if I was invested, I would get out.
Do you think there are some questions that are worthy of CFTC looking at the trading records, especially when you have a fracture of the gold market? You've had the SLV thing double, and we don't know. I don't know, maybe the metal's going in there. JP Morgan lists 193 million ounces on the COMEX report in their house account. Andy, how do you feel about that? Someone who's dedicated your life to this industry, that these guys pay to settle, they don't, never speak, never speak for their actions. And they have 193, that's almost as much as the total Hunt brothers. I think it's more than their goal. And we don't know if maybe they took metal from there to put it into SLV. They're the only ones who know. How does that leave you feeling as someone who's built your business? And also, if you could tell people, what is your audit procedure? What do you do with ask for storage? Do you handle it some way? And I'm sorry, one last question. As someone who has a precious metals business, would you be shocked if the person answering the phone at iShares couldn't find an audit?
Well, that wouldn't shock me. I think you'd probably have to go through the bureaucratic red tape process to get to someone who could answer that. But I think the lack of transparency is very disconcerting. And I think the question that really needs to be asked is who in their right mind would dump 1.5 billion ounces at the open in a thinly traded session when physical demand globally is going through the roof. It's done for effect. And that to me is the most troubling thing about all of this is it's very obvious. This is not how you maximize a sale. You would bleed it out over a series of days or even weeks at that level. That's a year and a half's worth of mine supply. So yeah, I find it disconcerting. I think it's a slap in the face of all of us when they pay a fine, admit guilt, and are still allowed to run two of the biggest silver trusts in the world. They should have been stripped of their custodialship. They should have nothing to do with integrity and transparency, or in this case, lack of running a fund. The fact that it hasn't been audited in almost a year is ridiculous. As far as our audits are concerned, this is why we use Brinks and we use third-party auditing. We have nothing to do with the audit. I just like to go there and oversee it and watch it myself. The custodian should have nothing to do with the audit or any of the counting. The custodian should only be there to run the mechanics of it. But in terms of auditing and in terms of validating in and outflow, that should come from a third-party entity. In our case, it's Brinks. When things come in, Brinks validates it, Brinks counts it, Brinks gives us the receipt, sends it to the clients. We don't. And I think that's where the conflict of interest is, especially in a group like that who's paid billions and billions and billions of dollars in fines over the last 10, 15 years for all sorts of financial malfeasance. So yeah, it's troubling. I've said a long time, if all people did who own that fund were to read pages 6 through 12 titled Risk Factors and really read it, they'd sell it. There's so many things in there that would lead me or anyone who read it slowly enough, maybe twice, to say, what the heck am I doing in this fund? So yeah, I think it's troubling to say the least, but more so, how can anyone explain how any logical, rational entity would dump that much at the open when the market is going, or the demand is going parabolic? It's just so counterintuitive. It's crazy.
And Andy, how does it leave you feeling when we had the whole short sale thing and you hear congressmen, congresswomen saying they're going to raise this investigation, they're going to tell the SEC this and that? Look at who's running the SEC, Gary Gensler, who was presiding over the CFTC's investigation that found nothing, did not find nothing, that he said found nothing, when Bart Schulten told us years later. How does that leave you feeling?
It's troubling when, the little guy, marches up the hill coordinated with all of his buddies with their pitchforks, and they start winning, and then the rules get changed in midstream. That's the part that's troubling. They did that to Bunker Hunt in 1980, and they changed the rules, and they had to sell their position or they would have gone to jail. So it's troubling. You can see the fact that the little guy never really gets a fair shake, and when they get close to the finish line, they move the finish line or trip the little guy. And the fact that you're only able to buy one share at the time when people wanted to get into GameStop and let it go higher, no, you can only own one share. The rules are changing constantly to benefit the big guy, the hedge fund, the banks, and that's not right. That's not right at all. And it really, I think, as I've mentioned to you before, I think what we're seeing is the law of unintended consequences. That type of behavior is alerting people who have nothing to do with metals or cryptocurrencies. People who are in the market and have been forever, not looking anywhere else, are saying, what the hell is going on here? This isn't how free markets are supposed to work. And I have friends who I know who are telling me they're going to cash. People aren't asking me about gold, don't own cryptocurrencies. They're Joe Sixpack, and he's going to cash because you see that it's a rigged game. You see it's a casino. You see it's not fair, and it's not stacked up in our favor. So to me, the silver and gold and all of the things that we talk about, that's one thing. But the law of unintended consequences, I think the more you mess with this, the more obvious you do it, and the more obvious it's becoming, I think, mixed in with a tremendous amount of volatility, it will have a big impact on people's desire to stay in that rigged game.
Fortunately, I think it's pretty darn exciting that here at Silver Bowl 1, the little guy is going to start running up some touchdowns and the football in the Silver Cartel's end zone. which, because again, it's interesting when you think about it, you know, your typical David versus Goliath, even the most seemingly insurmountable mission, well, if you have enough time to plan, you have enough people on your side, and then inherently, if you realize that people who, when faced with a challenge, band together and find creative, positive solutions are inherently smarter, can always be a step ahead than people who have to cheat and use brute force. Well, we'll just come back to that because I have one final question that perhaps David and Peter could take here. David, perhaps, again, answer this as you will. I know you're running a company, but I've gotten a lot of questions from investors saying, will the miners withhold supply from the market? Is that something that's feasible? Is that something that comes up? Anything you can comment? And Peter, you as well after David.
Sure. Well, every company is different in terms of what their ability to do that would be. So, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, mining companies have expenses. You know, they have to pay people and they have to, you know, make their investments at their mines, etc. So, you know, I think if a company is in a very strong free cash flow position, then they could withhold metal from the market and, you know, just delay their sales. I believe First Majestic has done that in the past. I do remember Goldcorp doing that in the early 2000s for similar reasons, but obviously that was gold. And so it can be done. It's pretty unusual because, you know, frankly, at this stage, we're coming out of a bear market. I don't think there are a lot of companies out there that have the balance sheet that they can do that. But, you know, I think if they can, you know, some will, and, you know, I think investors may like that.
Peter?
Yeah. Like David said, I know that some companies do that. Endeavor Silver is one that I don't know if they've done it or how much they may have done it lately, but Brad over there did mention that that's something they can and do from time to time. I know, like David said, First Majestic does that as well from time to time. And to me, it bodes well for, I mean, not only, you know, miners in general, silver miners, actual producers, but a lot of, you know, sort of near-term developers and even your optionality plays, someone who's got big resources that are still in the ground. Frankly, you know, even as that stays in the ground, as the value goes up, even if it stays unmined for a while, another year, a couple of years, the value is just going up. So, you know, if it comes out of the ground a couple of years from now, it's going to just generate that much more cash flow. So there are a lot of different types of you know, mining or near-term or exploration plays that make sense in this kind of market. And in any case, that's certainly what we try to, you know, help people find the right kind of plays, the ones that will do best. But this is definitely silver coming into its own, and it's you know, it's been a long time coming, and you know, a lot of people also downplay the fact that you know, maybe you have a bunch of, you know, you have tens of millions, maybe more of young new investors who are finally paying attention to this space. I wouldn't downplay that too much. I think that it is gonna have an impact, and a lasting impact, and maybe we're gonna start seeing silver, you know, really start to catch up to gold, and like I say, you know, take its place.
Janet Yellen is warming up the presses, getting ready to go big, so it will be exciting. And again, I mentioned a minute ago how it's been awesome to see. I feel like JP Morgan, or I feel like some of the banks on Tuesday went all in with a bluff, and the beautiful people. I think it was awesome seeing how no matter what they threw their little paper junk at, people kept buying. And again, I wish that I hadn't had to do the video that is about to come your way in a couple minutes about SLV, although I think it's things people should know. And maybe the positive that comes out of it. I got one message from someone today saying that he just sold his SLV because of some of the stuff that he's seen and learned. I'd encourage people, if what you see in a couple minutes resonates with you, share it with people who are invested in SLV. I would want you to know it. I'm not asking you to agree with what I say, but there's some stuff in there that I would think you'd want to know. But that's the exciting thing, is that once people find out, because how do you ever really change something like that? I don't believe in, taking out guns. That's not my thing, or doing anything. And I don't believe in trying to one up them in their crime, but it's based on a lie. And when people find out, it's like, they need somebody to trade against. They can't pick themselves off. This scheme works on ripping people off. And in fact, I just watched The Big Short yesterday again, and it was perfect because they make you feel stupid. So you don't ask, so you don't look. And in one phone call and a couple minutes on SLV, there's plenty of red flags there. And I think it's damned awesome that I would like to give a big congratulations to everyone in that Wall Street Silver group. I mean, I saw they're taking my videos, taking other videos. They're having discussions on them, saying like, hey, you check this. Can you do that? And hey, how can we get this message out? That's inspiring. And it's
I just got invited on.
It's like one of those veteran teams where we need that young energy, because I see this as being on the ropes, and I'm curious what the reaction will be as people see some of this stuff the next hour throughout the week. So either case, folks, can you give quick, as we wrap up, because that's about to start in a couple of minutes, just quick where you're from and what kind of services you offer, just so that people know what you're doing and can follow up if they would like to. Andy, can we start with you, please?
Yeah. So as always, Chris, I'm here quite a bit. Miles Franklin. A lot of the dealers are out of product. As I've mentioned for the last year, I've gotten in front of all of this, and I've gone way out into the future on all of my purchases. And we have in total close to 300,000 ounces in Britannias, Kangaroos, Philharmonics, Silver Eagles, Silver Maple Leafs, Krugerrands, 1 ounce rounds, and Pamp Swiss 100-ounce bars. They are either in my vault or will be within the next week to 10 days. And the crazy thing about it, with the exception of junk silver, all of it is 2021. All of it. There is no backdate material. None. No one is selling us anything. And so I was able to early on and late last year secure shipments into the first quarter. We're happy to say we will have a lot of stuff to sell over the next couple of weeks. And always appreciate being here, Chris. I look forward to seeing the show here. I'm going to stick around and watch it.
All righty. And David?
Well, I run a silver company called Kuya Silver. So we're developing Bethania silver mine in Peru, and looking to get that into production possibly by the end of this year, or early next year. Yeah, I'm very supportive of this, of the silver market, and doing what we can to be a good, sort of citizen to help, the silver price. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting project, but we'll, so take a look at the website and feel free to follow up if you have any questions.
All right. Well, we will do that, and I appreciate that. And Peter, can you let folks know where they can find you?
Absolutely. So www.silverstockinvestor.com. So I research, write, edit a silver exclusively focused investment newsletter. Totally independent. We're not paid by any of the companies that we write about. And it covers everything from, ETFs all the way to junior silver explorers. So there's something for everyone there. And certainly, like I say, we cover all the bases, the large producers, developers, optionality plays, and junior explorers. Silverstockinvestor.com. I encourage everyone to check it out.
Yeah, and I will look forward to hearing how you think is going to play out, because it's interesting. Even the next time you have, there's random days where silver goes up 50 cents or $1. I wonder what happens when you have that, and then Janet Yellen goes big, and then Jerome Powell goes bigger. So I'll look forward to reading that. And Yara, where can people find you and your fine content?
Well, I am honored and overjoyed to be partners in Arcadia with you, Chris Marcus. And so I get to meet with a lot of the people that are on the other end of YouTube. And so think I'm changing my title from marketing to community on some level, because it's really amazing getting to connect with all of the people who watch our videos, who share them, who learn something new, and that sparks them to look into something new. So I'm on Twitter at Yars, Y-A-R-R-S. I share all the Arcadia stuff. I'm also, it's been really fun getting to work with Miles Franklin and take our orders and get to see kind of the order flow and get my first time on the front lines with that. And that's been really fun. And I've made some really great friends. And so hopefully I will see all of you at some point on Twitter, in the live chat, on our videos. And I'd like to invite you all to come to our website, sign up for our newsletter. We don't send out anything extra. We just want to make sure that you're getting all the content that we're making that you'd like to get, as every once in a while people get unsubscribed from YouTube. And I'd love to ask you, if you're not yet, to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell and share this with your friends and help get the word of silver out there to people who haven't found out yet what changed my life when I found out about it. So I'm very passionate to share that with the rest of you.
Well, I appreciate that, Yara. And as you can see here, this is the thumbnail of our upcoming video, what SLV investors should know about JP Morgan. And I personally feel should send to, or I won't say should send, but I created this. Again, I know it's exciting that we have a lot of these folks in Wall Street, Silver, and elsewhere. There's a new energy in all of this. And I think these are some questions that CFTC's budget, they requested $304 million that you're all paying for. And I think there's some questions in there that certainly if you have people you care about that are in SLV, I would think they'd want to know. So with that said, we're going to wrap up. You can go over to the channel and find the link. We are going to start the show there. Thank you again to all my guests for being here, and I will see you again soon.
Thanks.
Chris.
I think